Welcome back to Up North at 4. I was recently reading a magazine from Decorah, Iowa, and I came across an excellent article that was written by a mental health expert, and that expert is Olivia Schnur. She's joining us now on Up North at 4. Olivia, I reached out to you because I thought your writing was so good, and I wanted our viewers to kind of see that as well. So before we get into some 5 daily habits about good mental health, let's just talk a little bit about your background. How did you get into this sort of work?
So I got my master's in clinical mental health counseling in 2016. I just felt really drawn to mental health. And it's, I think, really come into the collective conscious lately, mostly probably because of COVID. But it seems like more and more people are coming to understand the importance of mental health and, making mental health more accessible, I think is really important with all the demand.
Definitely, and that's what we're here today to do. So let's make it more accessible. You gave me 5 words, and then you're going to expand on those words. Our first word is thoughts. Tell me about thoughts.
Yeah, so I think it sounds really simple, but do we actually consider how our thinking impacts our mental health? Because so often our thoughts are just automatic, unconscious, but we do have control over them. And so it's this idea of metacognition. So thinking about your thinking, you can actually stop and observe your thoughts. This is what we call mindfulness, but it's really just kind of tracking your thoughts, watching them, listening to them. Everybody, experiences that a little bit differently, but just paying attention to what's going on in there. And I like to say, like, the weather of your mind. So, what is the weather? You can track those patterns over time. And if you notice that the weather is like really dark and stormy a lot of the times, or lots of lightning bolts, anxiety, fear, you can start to shift that. Sometimes you can shift that on your own and just kind of bring yourself back to more positive types of thinking. But sometimes you do need the help of a professional to kind of help track those thinking patterns and give you tools and techniques to intervene. But mindfulness is just one way that you can at least start to figure out what is the weather without really changing it.
Yeah, I like that. I've heard mindfulness is kind of paying attention to what you're paying attention to non judgmentally, right? So you're paying attention to the weather as you say it, not necessarily to be hard on yourself or be mad. It's just what's going on. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, because we don't want to shame ourselves for feeling a certain way. Like, there's a lot of things that set us up to experience the weather that we're having. And, just noticing is information. So you don't have to judge that process. You don't have to shame yourself for whatever's going on. Just notice it. And then, if the weather's bright and sunny every day, great. But if it's not, you can get help with that and you can change that.
All right, let's go to word number 2, perception. Tell me about that one.
Sure. So, gratitude is one way that we can start to shift our perception. So, the way that we perceive the world, we perceive ourselves, we perceive events, it kind of goes hand in hand with that, like, dark and stormy. Are we kind of always seeing the negative in things, or are we able to see the positive? And one way that we can start to shift that is by focusing on gratitude. And I think not all the time is it appropriate, but if your basic needs are met, you can be grateful for those things. Like, that's a really good place to start if you're new to the practice. If it's something that you do practice, you can start to elevate it, gratitude for things that maybe aren't always easy, like a challenging job. There are things to be grateful for within that, or maybe even challenging relationships, not toxic or harmful relationships, but challenging conversations, things like that. Like, what can we be grateful for every day? And can we see the best in a situation? I think that's another way we can start to shift that, um, and shift our perception a little bit.
That's interesting to me. I think I've thought about how to balance that with just kind of admitting sometimes when things suck, right? Is there any good things that come from just admitting the bad things as well?
Yeah, I mean, we want to be careful not to like do any kind of spiritual bypassing. So we're not just like, oh, the situation is wonderful when it's not. We definitely want to be able to admit when a situation is not going well and we can take action to change that. But it is important to see good in situations, even if the good is like, I'm growing or I'm happy with the way I handled this. Or if things are really dark, sometimes it's nice to just take a moment to focus on what is good so you don't get caught up in like a negativity spiral.
Our third one is environment. Tell us about environment, Olivia.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to what we were saying. Like, you don't want to just ignore things that are bad. Like, there are things in your environment that influence the way that you feel. So, negative coworkers, dark, dimly lit environments, like you're not getting enough sun, or if you're in, hopefully not, but like a toxic relationship or a toxic job. I mean, that influences you. We don't want to ignore that influence. And again, this is an area where working with a professional, getting help is going to be very important. But if it's not a dire circumstance, I think it's really important to focus on nurturing positive relationships, putting your energy and effort into those relationships that are a two-way street, that offer you support, that you can be vulnerable, that you feel comfortable in. Like the more that you feed into those relationships, you're going to get something back. And that doesn't mean you're always just taking, you have to give as well. But, that relationship where there is that reciprocity. And, same thing, like if maybe your job is not great or maybe your circumstances are not great, well, invest in yourself so that you can remove yourself from that situation as much as possible, taking courses, trainings, whatever to improve your situation. And then again, you can focus on, things are not great right now, but I have hope that I can improve it. But not to negate that our environment certainly does influence the way that we feel.
Yeah, I was thinking about the phrase the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So when you think about relationships, the ones that aren't maybe going as well, those are the ones that you tend to put your mind in, but I like what you're saying about nurturing the ones that are beneficial to you. So let's go to our fourth word, which is posture. Tell us about posture.
Okay, so posture is another sneaky little thing. I am also a yoga teacher, so I like to think about how the body also influences our mental health. And so I think a lot of people understand now, like fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system, or rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system. So, fight or flight, and neither of these are good or bad. They both have a purpose. Fight or flight gets bad rap, but it's there for a reason. It's there to help us survive. Um, but if you think about how it evolved, how we evolved, where it's meant to prepare us to either fight or flight. And so when you do that, your shoulders roll forward, your muscles get really tense, your breathing constricts. And so if you think about that in the opposite way, when we relax our shoulders, release the tension from our muscles, breathe into the deep belly, we're communicating to the brain, I'm safe, right? So it's really important to consider how the postures that you're putting your body into every day influence your mental health. I mean, a lot of people I think are just used to like a baseline level of like aches and pains, which I guess is somewhat normal, but there's a certain level you shouldn't expect to wake up in pain every day, or you shouldn't um, expect to like not be able to have a full range of motion. So really thinking about getting up and stretching. How are you sitting? How's your office workspace positioned? How are you seated on the couch? How much time do you spend sitting? Like to really break out of that mold, literally, that your body's been put into.
If I was like anyone else at home, I think we're all just kind of relaxed now. So I appreciate you reminding me of that. Of course, my shoulders are always going up. Okay, Olivia, I like that. Very practical, easy to implement as well. Let's talk about the fifth word, which is breath.
Yes. So that definitely ties in to the nervous system. And I think it's one of the simplest ways that we can really communicate to our body that we are safe. And it's a pretty quick and effective way to get back to baseline. Now, of course, if you have a mental health disorder, especially an anxiety disorder, breathing, focusing on breath can trigger a little bit of anxiety at first. And so that's the caveat I would give. But for general mental health, just focusing on as much as you can, sending your belly or your breath into your belly, and then a long, deep exhale, that can really send a cue to the body that you're doing pretty well. Because if you're in a stressful, life-threatening situation, you're probably not breathing that way. So yeah, that's it's a really good way. And there's so many different breathing techniques. You don't have to get caught up in all that. Just remember, breathe in my belly as much as possible and try to just extend like a long, slow breath out.
So we went through these five words. So, Olivia, take us through kind of a quick meditation.
Yeah. So this is just a really simple kind of practice. We're going to tie a few of the tips together. So you might notice that I'm going to ask you to focus on your posture, focus on your thoughts, focus on your breathing. We're going to end with a little gratitude. So if you're able, just kind of get comfy, relax your muscles. You can either kind of relax your gaze, focus on a spot in front of you, or you can close your eyes. Totally optional. The first thing you want to do is just check in with your breath. Now, it can be nice to take a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly and just kind of notice where the breath is. We're not judging that. We're not worried about what information we get. We're just sensing, where is my breath? And then you can keep your hands there if that feels good, or you can relax them back down. And we're going to shift our awareness to notice our thinking. So just start to track what's going on, the weather of the mind, what information is coming through, might be images, feelings, memories, racing thoughts. And we're not judging, just noticing. And then you can let that go. And lastly, just feel into your body. Just notice what it feels like to be present. And then bring your awareness back to your breath. And this time, see if you can breathe in and fill up your belly. Breathe out slowly. If you can, breathe in through your nose, fill up your belly. Exhale through your mouth, let it all drain out. That one more time, big breath in through the nose. And then exhale, let it all go. And lastly, Think about one thing that you have to be grateful for. And it might just be that you took a moment to breathe. But just take a moment, thank yourself for this moment of mindfulness. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back.
I was going to give you a round of applause, but I feel like that would ruin the moment. Maybe snaps. Olivia, thank you. I feel much more relaxed, and I'm sure the people at home do as well. Really appreciate your time, like I said, and thanks again.
Thank you.